Hey everybody, how's it going tonight? Sound good now that I fixed it?
How's it going tonight?
Ah, mute. Mute. There we go. Well, now I know how it sounds. So, good deal for me, I guess. Don't feel like I'm quite. Let's see how that looks. There we go. Now I'm centered. Jeff and Jill, good to see you. Cynthia, I'm glad that you are with us as well. And Misty, it's good to see you. Got some folks over on YouTube. Glad you're with us. Now we got some people coming in. My neck is really stiff. Sorry if you see any kind of jerking or twitching. It's just me trying to work out the kinks in my neck. Ben, good to see you, man. I feel like I haven't seen you guys in like 2 weeks. Wonder why indeed. Well, I'm back. And I'll be back, I think, fairly steadily until, I really didn't get any honest vacation this past year, except for a couple days that we spent in Branson on the way back from Indiana. But the first time I had vacation planned, I got COVID, so that doesn't really count. And then going to bury my mom counts more as bereavement, but that's okay. I don't need vacation. I love my job. Every day at work is like a day of vacation. But I am taking a vacation in August. I'm going to go visit my friends Mike and Terry. We stayed with them when we went to Indiana this last week to bury my mom, but we were only there for like 3 days, so didn't get to visit very much. But that's okay. I look rested. Well, that is a compliment because I am anything but. I think I am done with the whole concept of driving to Indiana. Take some vitamins here while we're waiting for some people to pop in. Sue from St. Joe Mo, it is good to see you. How are you doing? Gas prices comparable. They were, yes, comparable. What is it, like 409 right now here? I think Indiana, there were some places it was like 356 or so. So a little bit better for some reason. I guess Texas doesn't have access to oil or oil processing plants or something. I don't know. Carol King Wansley, how wonderful to see you this evening. Sue, I'm glad you're doing better. I know that you went through some stuff. Carol, how are you and David doing? Driving down through Oklahoma near the border, I thought about you guys. Wondered how you were getting along. Yeah, Illinois 465. I'm not surprised about that. I don't think we ever filled up in Illinois. I don't like driving through Illinois. The gas was a lot, I will tell you that. So Cheryl's car gets an average of 32 miles a gallon. It probably gets, I mean, that's a mix of town driving and highway driving. So she probably gets 37, 38 on the highway, which is exceptional for a car her size. It's a mini SUV, crossover SUV. So we filled up twice on the way there, started with the full tank. So I guess that's 3 times. We filled up 3 times at like $50 a fill up. So $150. And then once we got there, we did okay. There was like 1 tank while we were there and 3 on the back. So about $350 in gasoline. Something that, a couple years ago would have cost less than half of that. But hey, it is what it is. It was cheaper than flying and parking a car and renting a car. So Jimmy, good to see you. Yeah, we read about that. Ben coming back. Ben says, especially with all the air cancellations. My sister didn't have any problems flying back to New Mexico, thankfully, but I did read that flying was a completely a complete mess. Man, my face looks so fat. It's got to be the lens, right? Can't be my face. I only gained 3 pounds on my trip. Maybe I gained it all on my face. $7:09. We are going to get started. That is what we're going to do. I hope you're ready. I believe we are at Genesis 47, verse 13. If anyone can tell me that that's wrong. No, I think that's wrong. Hang on a second. Okay, 45:16. I knew we were halfway through something. So Genesis 45:16. I'm going to go a little lighter on the theology. At least that's the intention. No promises because I never know what's actually going to happen. I want to get into the narrative, the story, we're at the end, and I don't want to rush at the expense of missing something, but I think we can catch everything and get going. So we're going to start. It's 7:10. We're going to go ahead and start now. If you're with us on YouTube, nobody said anything, but we got a couple people there. I'm extremely grateful that you are with us, and I hope that you enjoy our time this evening. Please feel free to drop a note, and we will acknowledge that. So the last thing that happened is that Joseph confessed to his brothers that he was Joseph, their brother, and they sought forgiveness. They were repentant. I need to quit saying too. I don't know when I developed that verbal pause, so I'm going to try to stop that. They fell upon, well, Joseph fell upon Benjamin's neck and wept, while Benjamin wept upon his neck. So what we're going to see is through the rest of this story that Joseph is going to favor Benjamin just as his father did. And I think we're at a point, it doesn't make any sense at this point that Joseph is still testing his brothers or testing his father. I think we're at a point where the the lesson being taught. And again, this is a story of what the Israelites believed about their heritage. So it's not a matter of being right or wrong. It's a matter of understanding the perspective from the Israelites. And even though they're all Israelites, the point seems to be that God has favorites. Now, I made a comment about my friend being very Calvinistic, and I should have explained that a little better, although I have a couple of times. Calvin believed that God predestined certain people to be drawn to God, to accept Christ as their Savior, and go to heaven. And there is scripture to support this. I really struggle with that, as did Wesley, because if you believe in predestination, you believe in double predestination as a logical conclusion, saying that God has selected certain people not to believe in God, not to believe in Christ, and not to receive salvation. And so that is not a good thing. Janice says that she's having technical difficulties with Facebook and YouTube, so she won't be at Bible study right away. But Dave's working at it, and they hope that they're able to get back on soon. So let's hope that that happens. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Ben, that is the exact case that God shows a favoritism for Israel, and without a doubt, God does show a favoritism for Israel. So the problem I have with pulling out from that this notion of predestination is that Jesus changed the mission, right? He at one point said, I came only for the lost sheep of Israel. And it's hard to know whether he was being sarcastic or whether he was testing the Syrophoenician woman during that conversation or what his real intention was. But at the end of his journey, he said, go now and make disciples of all the nations. And so it seems like we're all Israel at that point. And Wesley couldn't stand the concept of predestination because it implied double predestination, and he would not believe that God created people to condemn them to hell. So that's what I meant by that. But let's not really get into those weeds, and let's go back to the fact that this is a story of what the Israelites believed about their story, and they believed that they were God's favorites, and I think that's true. I think that is a valid thing for them to think. So when the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, Joseph's brothers have come, Pharaoh and his servants were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this. Load your animals and go back to the land of Canaan. Take your father and your households and come to me so that I may give you the best of the land of Egypt and you may enjoy the fat of the land. And that expression, the fat of the land, means the best of the best, the best of the land. He's willing, he loves Joseph so much, he's willing to give his family the best that Egypt has to offer. You are further charged to say, do this. Take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives and bring your father and come. So as you go, take my stuff so that you've got enough room to bring back all of your people and all of your stuff. He says, give no thought to your possessions. So take that back. Don't worry about your stuff. We've got better stuff here and I'll give you whatever you want. Just bring your people. For all of the best of the land of Egypt is yours. So you might be tempted, especially as we dig into the story, to think that Pharaoh is setting up the Egyptians, that he is luring them into a trap to enslave them. Please know that is not the case. This Pharaoh is completely honest and truthful and loving and generous when he wants to give the Israelites everything that they could possibly want. In fact, during this time period, Egypt was very kind to the Israelites. Now, I know, and you know, we all know that eventually the Israelites are going to become slaves. But what happens, and I'll just tell you, since we're not going to go into Exodus, is that eventually the Israelites become so powerful that the Egyptians begin to fear them, and that's when the converting them into slaves begins. So don't think that this is a trap. This is not disingenuous, okay? So they went out of Egypt. They came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, and they said to him, Joseph is still alive. He's even ruler over all the land of Egypt. He was stunned. He could not believe them. But when they told him all the words of Joseph that he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father, Jacob, revived. Israel, remember, Israel is Jacob. And another thing to really note and keep an eye on as we read this story is this is where the story transitions from the person of Israel, who is Jacob, to the people of Israel. It's important that God gave Jacob the name Israel because of this transition that goes from the person of Israel, Jacob, to the people of Israel as we know them today. Israel said, enough. And that word enough has such power to it. It says so much. It says enough of the past, enough of whatever happened to your brother, enough of the fact that my son has been missing to me for this long, enough that he's been in Egypt this entire time, enough of all of that. None of it matters anymore. My son Joseph is still alive, which brings to me to mind the story of the prodigal son. My son is alive. I must go and see him before I die. And that moves us to Genesis 46, verse 1. When Israel, the person, set out on his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba, remember this is an important place, he'd offered a sacrifice before, and it's important for you to know because sacrifices are rarely mentioned in Genesis. Sacrifices become part of the Levitical law, which we'll discuss both in Exodus, but also highly discussed in Leviticus. So in Genesis, sacrificing wasn't a law. It was a way that they could, it's a way to honor God. Jennifer says she's sharing so she can watch in a little while. Good job. Good deal, Jennifer. I'm glad that you'll be able to do that. So Jacob set out from Beersheba. The sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry them. They also took their livestock and the goods that they had acquired in the land of Canaan. Remember, this is not something they were required to do, but something that they did nonetheless. Pharaoh said, don't worry about your stuff, we've got stuff. But they brought their stuff. I'm sure that's theologically significant, but we'd have to get so deep. We're just going to acknowledge it and move on. They came into Egypt, Jacob and all of his offspring with him, his sons' sons with him, his daughters, his sons' daughters, all of his offspring, he brought with him into Egypt. So he's a grandfather at this place. And now we're going to get some really exciting genealogy. Now, these are the names of the Israelites. Keep in mind, this is the sum total of the Israelites. And why would God send the Israelites into Egypt? Well, it's actually quite simple. God needed a remnant to survive so that the Israelites would survive and grow. And if you'll recall, there was a famine everywhere except for the parts of Egypt that Joseph was responsible for and made them or encouraged them, talked them into storing up food for the 7 years of the famine, or at least the years before the 7 years of famine. So these are the names of the Israelites: Jacob and his offspring who came to Egypt. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the children of Reuben, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, Camri. The children of Simeon, okay, so keep in mind Reuben is the firstborn. Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Shachin, Zohar, and Shaul, which is also Saul, the son of a Canaanite woman, so they had their way with whatever women they wanted to. The children of Levi, the children of Judah, the children of Perez, the children of Issachar, the children of Zebulun. These were the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padan Aram, together with his daughter Dinah. The children of Gad, the children of Asher, the children of Zilpah, who gave Laban to his daughter Leah, and she bore to Jacob 16 persons. The children of Jacob's wife Rachel. Now this is important. I've skipped reading the names of the children because I don't think it's crucial to what we're going to cover today, okay? But the children of Jacob's wife Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. Keep in mind, these are the favored because Rachel was the favored of Jacob/Israel. To Joseph in the land of Egypt, so Joseph has children as well, were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. The children of Benjamin, who had several, and then all those people are the children of Rachel, who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. Yeah, so they're called the children of Rachel, but technically the grandchildren of Rachel. And you'll see that there's a little bit of generational switching going on. The children of Dan, the children of Naphtali. So all of the persons belonging to Jacob who came into Egypt, who were of his own offspring, not including the wives of his sons, okay, so only the ones, his children and his grandchildren, were 66 persons in all. That's what it took. It took 66 Israelites to spawn a religion that eventually splintered into Christianity and became billions of people today. 66. I say this because we have more than 66 members at Oak Park United Methodist Church. We are not done. We are, in fact, we are just beginning. Oak Park is being reborn. The children of Joseph who were born in him in Egypt were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came into Egypt were 70. So I'm assuming the 70 is the 66 aforementioned, the 2 of Joseph, and Jacob and Rachel. So there you have 70. And then we move on. And so this is an interesting portion of this chapter, Genesis 46. Israel, Jacob, sent Judah ahead to Joseph to lead the way before him into Goshen. I think I skipped a part. I'm going to go back. I skipped something important. For some reason, I missed Genesis 1, 46, 1 through 4. When Israel set out on his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba, no, I said that. I missed this part. He offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Okay, so again, we have this notion of the God of the father, Isaac, who was the God of his father, Abraham, who we know to be the one true God. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. And then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down into Egypt, so I will make of you a great nation there. So that is, again, if you ever thought that Pharaoh was tricking them into going into Egypt, that's not the case. This was God's will. God wanted them to go into Egypt so that they would survive. And the God of your father, do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will myself go down with you to Egypt, and I will bring you up again, and Joseph's own hand shall close your eyes. That means Joseph will be with you upon your death. I'm sorry I skipped that. That's really important. So Israel sends Judah ahead to Joseph to lead the way before him into Goshen. Okay, so Goshen is going to be where they settle. When they came to the land of Goshen, Joseph made his chariot ready and went up to meet his father Israel in Goshen. He presented himself to him, fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. This is Joseph reunited with his father for the first time since he had been sold into slavery. Israel, and we also need to understand that when the Bible speaks of slavery in this case, we cannot correlate this with the slavery as we understand it as it pertains to, for instance, the Civil War. It's different. There are many translations that change slavery to servant, and I always thought it was kind of a weakness of them to do that. But as you will see, it's really different. It's more akin to a tenant farmer, kind of. I mean, look at Joseph. Joseph was sold into slavery to someone in Egypt and ended up ruling Egypt just as Pharaoh ruled Egypt. So let's make sure that we understand that the term slavery in Genesis is different than what we might think of slavery as in the mid 1800s. Okay. So they go into Goshen. Israel's reunited with Joseph, and Israel says, Jacob says, I can die now, having seen for myself that you are still alive. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, listen, here's what's got to happen. You've got to trust me. Just do what I tell you to, please. It's not in the scripture, but it's implied. I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and I will say to him, my brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. How Fortuitous that they brought their flocks even after they were told not to, because somebody has to take care of those flocks. Derek, good evening. Good to see you. The men are shepherds. They've been keepers of livestock. They've brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls to you and says, what is your occupation? When he says, what do you do? How can I use you in my kingdom? You shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth, even until now. Both we and our ancestors, in order, the reason that you're going to tell him this is so that you can settle in the land of Goshen. Because Egyptians hate shepherds. So because they hate shepherds, but they're going to love you because they love me, they're going to let you settle in Goshen. Now, there's never anything that really explains why that's so crucial, but it is absolutely crucial. Okay, let me retract the word absolutely. I feel like it's crucial. We're never really told why, but theologians through the years note that Goshen is sort of on the periphery. It's not in the midst of Egypt where they would be under constant control. It also is sort of a borderland of Egypt, so that should those Israelites ever need to make a quick escape, don't know if that's going to happen, he said sarcastically, it would be easier for them to escape from Goshen than it would be to escape from anywhere else. So even now, Joseph is looking out for the Israelites, for his family. He wants them to settle into Goshen. And he knows that if everybody says, oh yeah, we're shepherds, they're going to say, oh yeah, you can stay in Goshen. That's perfectly fine. They probably didn't like the smell of excrement. I mean, that's probably why they didn't like shepherds and probably why they were content to have them far away. 47:1, and I'm going to see if we can get through 47. So Joseph went and told Pharaoh, my father and my brothers with their flocks and herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan, and they're now in the land of Goshen. From among his brothers, he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, hey, what do y'all do? What's your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, as they had been coached by Joseph, your servants are shepherds, as our ancestors were. They said to Pharaoh, we've come to reside as aliens in the land, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks because the famine is severe in the land of Canaan, right? If the famine is severe and nothing is growing, there's nothing in the land of Canaan for the flocks to eat. That's why they brought them, because they would have died otherwise. Now we ask you, let your servants settle in the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you, so settle your fathers and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in the land of Goshen. And if you know that they are capable men among them, put them in charge of my livestock. So not only does he calls Goshen the most favorable part of Egypt. I think that might be a little disingenuous. I don't know. Maybe not. Let's not ascribe that to Pharaoh. Maybe at that time it was not. Okay, I take it all back. It wasn't disingenuous. Goshen was a beautiful area. It just had no livestock yet. Once it had livestock, it would have been kind of ruined for the Egyptians, which is okay because that's kind of what Joseph is going for, right? And he's going to put them in charge of not only their own livestock, but also Pharaoh's livestock. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and presented him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many are the years of your life? How old are you? Jacob said to Pharaoh, the years of my earthly sojourn are 130. Few and hard have been the years of my life. He's 130, and he says that his life has been few years. So again, I mean, I made this up on my own. I've never seen it anywhere. I don't know if it's accurate, but I think if you want an accurate kind of, or at least a way of understanding age, just divide that number by 2. So if he says that he's 130, then he'd be like 65 like us. And that would be, that is young to be in sort of the health that Jacob is in. He says, they do not compare with the years of the life of my ancestors during their long sojourn. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh again and went out from the presence of Pharaoh. Joseph settled his fathers and his brothers and granted them a holding in the land of Egypt, the best part of the land and the land of Rameses, as Pharaoh has instructed. And as Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all of his household with food, and Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and his father's household with food according to the number of their dependents. So he didn't give them all an equal share, but he gave everybody what they needed to survive, except we're going to find out that he's going to give Benjamin a whole lot more, again, showing favoritism to Benjamin, which I think fits in with the concept that the Israelites truly believed, and perhaps you do too, that God had favorites. Or maybe that God has favorites. Now, there was no food in all the land, and this now includes Egypt. It's gotten bad. Remember, the whole point was to store up grain so they could survive the famine. There was no food in all the land, for the famine was very severe. The land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money to be found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain that they bought. So Joseph gets all the money. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. When the money from the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was spent, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? Our money is gone." And Joseph said, "Hey, no problem. Just give me your livestock and I'll give you food in exchange for your livestock if your money is gone." So they said, "Well, what good is livestock if we're dead?" So they brought all their livestock, the flocks, the herds, the donkeys, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for all those, including their horses. That year, he supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock. When that year was over, they came to him the following year and said to him, "We cannot hide from my lord that our money is spent. The herds of our cattle are already yours. There's nothing left in the sight of the Lord but our bodies and our lands. Shall we die before you, both we and our land?" So again, we have this concept of, now think about the parallel here. What good is having anything, having our land, our birthright? What good is having our birthright? What good is having our bodies if we die? Do you remember not Ishmael? Do you remember? Oh, I'm getting so old. Somebody will get it before I do, probably. Oh my gosh, who is Jacob's brother? What is wrong with me? Don't report me to the bishop. Esau. I said it before anybody typed it. I know somebody's going to type it, but I said it before anybody typed it. Remember, Esau said, "What good is my birthright if I'm starving to death?" That was foreshadowing. It was hyperbole right at the time, right? Esau was not going to starve to death, but this was foreshadowing for what happens in the land of Egypt. I love how the story in Genesis just mirrors itself time and time and time again. We with our land will become slaves to Pharaoh. Keep in mind, not the mid-1800s American slaves as we understand them, but biblical servants, okay? Just give us seed so that we may live and not die, and so that the land may not become desolate. Now, I think this is very interesting. They don't ask for food here. They say, give us seed. We're giving you the land. So wouldn't it make sense for you to give us seed so that we could grow our own food, so that not only do we survive, but the land survives? And this brings back to my mind the original task to humanity. God created Adam to tend the garden at the very beginning of Genesis. And now, towards the very end of Genesis, the people of Israel, the people of Adam and Eve, are saying, we still want to tend to the garden. Don't just give us food, give us seed so that the land itself will not die. I'm not going to get all political on you. I'm not going to get into the whole climate change. I'm not going to get into the way that we treat the land, but I think we all agree that in the past we've not tended to the garden in the way that God would have had us tend to the garden. And perhaps this is a reminder for us that that was our task as humanity, to tend to the garden. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. All the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe upon them and the land became Pharaoh's. All the people, he made slaves from them, from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had a fixed allowance from Pharaoh, and they lived on the allowance the Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, now that this day I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh, here is seed for you, sow the land. Now here is where Joseph shows his true nature, okay? They are servants of the Pharaoh. Their land belongs to Pharaoh. They have title and deed to nothing. But this is what Joseph says on behalf of Pharaoh. At the harvests, you'll give 1/5 to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the field, so that the land can continue, and as food for yourselves and your households, and as food for your little ones. He could have taken it all. He only took 20%. Joseph is a good guy. They said, you've saved our lives. May it please my Lord, we will be slaves to Pharaoh. So Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt, and it stands to this day, not to this day, but to that day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th. The lands of the priests alone did not become Pharaoh. So once again, just a little note here that if you were a priest, you got to keep your land. Good thing I'm a priest, right? Nobody will ever take my land, which I don't have any of anymore. And I live in a house that the church owns, but that's okay. I love the house that the church owns. Okay. Are we gonna stop? No, we're gonna read just a couple more verses. Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the region of Goshen, and they gained possessions in it, were fruitful and multiplied exceedingly, because that was their job. Also, by the way, the job of Adam and Eve, right? Go, be fruitful, and multiply. That's the two things they're asked to do. Tend to the garden, be fruitful, and multiply. So Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the days of Jacob, the years of his life, were 147 years. So he only lived to be 73 and a half. He kind of died, well, young by today's standards, if you buy into my whole divide the age by 2 thing. When the time of Israel's death drew near. Now keep in mind, when Jacob dies, this is the official moment where Israel moves from becoming a person into becoming a people. It's happening this entire time, but that's when it happens that's when it ultimately happens. When the time of Israel's death drew near, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If I found favor with you, put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal loyally and truly with me." This was a way that they made oaths, okay? "Do not bury me in Egypt." That's what he wanted. He didn't want to be buried in Egypt. My mother didn't want to be buried in Texas, so I took her back to Indiana. It's the same thing. She wanted to be next to my dad, right? And he says, "When I lie down with my ancestors, carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." He answered, "I will do as you said." And he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. Then Israel bowed himself on the head of his bed. And that's where we're going to stop today. We are on chapter 48, and there's some really cool stuff that is also going to mirror back to what we've already read in the book of Genesis, especially as it pertains to Jacob and Esau. I'm excited about sharing this. And that's going to be 48, okay? 49 is going to be Jacob's last words to his son. It's very poetic. It's written as a poem, in fact. And then he dies. And chapter 49 and 50 is basically about Jacob's death and burial. Joseph forgives his brothers, although he's obviously already kind of done this. And then that's it. We're going to be done. So we've got 2 weeks maximum before we are done with Genesis. And then maybe we'll take a week to kind of go back through the whole thing and figure out what we've learned. And then you will have studied the book of Genesis more than most people will ever do in their entire life. I hope you find some holy pride in that. I hope that it brought it alive to you. I hope you learned more about Genesis than you ever thought there was to know. I hope that every time you read Genesis from now on, it will mean more to you. And I hope the same about the book of Acts, which we're going into. In fact, the Sunday is Pentecost, and as is the tradition, I'll be preaching on the book of Acts. So I'm going to send out a call. I know many of you are local. Some of you aren't. Sue probably can't come to church this Sunday. But this Sunday will mark the beginning of my 18th year of pastoral ministry, the beginning of my 32nd year of ministry, including my music ministry. And I'm going to start it. We're going to have a rebirth at Oak Park United Methodist Church. We are going to be reborn. It may be a Benjamin Button kind of birth where we start old and get young. I don't know, but we're going to start over. I want you to be there in church on Sunday. Please come to church on Sunday. I'm going to send out a call asking everybody to do that, but I'll just tell you that right now. Thank you very much, Cynthia. 50% of pastors who graduate from seminary and are ordained quit ministry by their 5th year. So I feel like making it 17 full years and into my 18th, I'm doing okay. And I love my job. I love that I get paid to study the Bible. It's just amazing. I don't know what else to say. I forgot to make myself big. There we go. See, now I'm big. Sorry about that. Anyway, that's it for tonight. So I hope that thank you very much. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate all that. I'm looking forward to continuing studying with you as we look at the book of Acts and the birth of the church, which is why I really want this to be the rebirth of Oak Park United Methodist Church as we celebrate the birth of Christ Church. I think it fits in very well. All right, that's all I've got for you tonight. God bless, Godspeed, and as always, Linda Williams, good to see you. Sarah, thank you. As always, thanks for watching.